They weren't the kind of couple you expect to disappear. Not reckless, not wild, not the ones who lived on the edge. If anything, they were the kind who arrived early, left politely, and remembered to say thank you to the host. The kind who offered to help clean up the cups even if it wasn't their house, which is why no one noticed when they left. It was a warm August night in East Ridge, California, the kind of evening that sits heavy in the air like a held breath. The glow from backyard string lights shimmered on the surface of the pool, and somewhere down the block, cicadas hummed like static. It was the tail end of summer, when everything feels a little sleepy, a little surreal. The party wasn't wild, not in the dangerous way. A handful of 20-somethings gathered in the backyard of a mutual friend, music low, drinks cheap, someone's Bluetooth speaker on shuffle. Dylan Mercado and Lacey Forrester arrived together just before 9 p.m. He drove like always, his beat-up Jeep Liberty pulling up slow behind the row of parked cars lining the cul-de-sac. She stepped out barefoot, holding her sandals in one hand, her other curled loosely around a chilled can of White Claw. Neighbors later said they heard laughter. Nothing unusual, a splash, a girl's voice calling out across the yard, then quiet again. By 2:00 a.m., the backyard had thinned out. A few people had Ubered home. Others drifted inside to crash on couches. But Dylan and Lacey, they were just gone. No goodbyes, no messages, no last sighting anyone could confirm with certainty. They left behind nothing. No phones, no wallets, no keys, no car, and no trace. The next morning, the host, a guy named Jordan Pike, woke up to a warm, cloudy pool and a hangover that came in waves. He figured Dylan and Lacey had just ducked out early. Maybe they had a fight. Maybe they caught a ride. Maybe they slipped off to be alone, like couples sometimes do. It wasn't until Monday that someone started asking questions. Lacey hadn't shown up for her shift at the cafe. Dylan's mom hadn't heard from him, and he always texted Sunday night just to say, "Love you, Ma." Still, no one panicked, not yet. These things happen. Young people go off-grid for a day or two, maybe a spontaneous road trip, maybe they needed a break. But the silence grew longer and heavier. Phones went to voicemail, texts sat unread, social media dead quiet. It was as if they'd been erased. By Wednesday, Jordan finally called the police. And just like that, a casual summer hangout became the last known location of a missing couple. Detectives walked the yard, took photos of the pool, pulled security footage from the neighbor's Ring camera. It showed them arriving, laughing, walking hand in hand through the side gate, but no footage ever showed them leaving. They had simply vanished, not into the night, but into some space between the frames. Lacey Forrester was the kind of girl who remembered your dog's name, even if she'd only met it once. She worked mornings at a downtown cafe called the Blue Finch, a warm little place with cracked tile floors and ceiling fans that spun lazily even in the winter. Locals say she made the best oat milk latte in East Ridge, not because it was anything fancy, but because she made it with that same soft-eyed sincerity she gave to everything else. She called older customers "Hon" without irony. She always had a scrunchie around her wrist and a pen behind her ear, and she never, not once, forgot an order. Lacey was 23 years old. She'd moved to East Ridge just 10 months earlier from Nevada, renting a tiny studio over a flower shop. It had one window, a crooked sink, and a fire escape where she kept her plants, a messy tangle of succulents, and one stubborn tomato vine that never quite grew. She painted thrifted picture frames. She took Polaroids of her coffee drinks, and she kept a notebook filled with ideas for poems she never let anyone read. She met Dylan Mercado at the laundromat on Chestnut Street. He was pulling his clothes from the dryer when she reached in and accidentally grabbed one of his t-shirts, a gray one with a faded Red Hot Chili Peppers logo on the front. They both laughed. He let her keep it. She wore it to bed for weeks. Dylan was 25, a mechanic at his uncle's auto shop, Mercado Auto Glass, just off Highway 9. Everyone in town knew him, not because he stood out, but because he made people feel seen. He remembered birthdays, offered rides, fixed things for free if you were going through a tough time. He was quiet in groups, but funny in a soft, unexpected way. His smile came slowly, like dawn. The two of them fit in that rare kind of way, the kind you don't even notice until they're missing, not flashy, not dramatic, just right. People said it all the time. They made each other better. He steadied her. She lit him up. They shared grocery lists, playlists, and a car. They had a Google Doc called Big Dreams, a running list of all the things they wanted to do together before they turned 30. Some small, go to a sunflower field, make cinnamon rolls from scratch. Some bigger, road trip to Alaska, open a coffee truck with a pun name she hadn't come up with yet. They were planning to move in together that fall. Dylan had already cleared out the second bedroom in his apartment. Lacey had started boxing up her books and mugs and the little painted stones she kept on her windowsill. They were building something, slowly, intentionally, the kind of life you grow into, like well-worn jeans. When they disappeared, it was like someone had pressed pause on that life. Their friends were the first to feel it. Ellie, who worked with Lacey at the cafe, said the coffee shop felt hollow. The register stuck, the lights buzzed, everything felt louder without her there to balance it. At the Brate shop, Dylan's tools stayed where he'd left them, grease-streaked, still warm somehow. And then there were the families. Dylan's mother, Rosa Mercado, spoke softly when she talked about him, the kind of soft that comes when you're trying not to break. She'd raised him alone ever since his father died in a freeway collision when Dylan was 9. He never made a fuss, she told a reporter, even when he had every reason to. She called him Mijo, her little boy. Even now. Lacey's parents drove in from Reno. Her mother, Adrienne, refused to unpack her suitcase for the first 2 weeks. She slept in her daughter's bed, wearing one of her sweatshirts, breathing in the trace of perfume that still lingered on the pillow. "I know it sounds crazy," she said once, "but sometimes I still expect to get a text from her, like she's just late, just held up somewhere, safe." But it wasn't just a feeling. The reality of their disappearance sank in slowly, like cold water through a crack in the floor. The unanswered messages, the frozen bank accounts, the car never recovered, the total absence of digital footprints. No calls, no pings, nothing. The last confirmed sighting of them was at the pool party. Before that, a selfie Lacey posted to her story, standing poolside, tongue out, her black bikini top peeking beneath a loose cotton tee. Dylan is in the background, grilling something, half out of frame. She captioned it, "Summer's almost over, but we're still glowing." That post would later be used by investigators, zoomed in and enhanced frame by frame, studying the brand of beer in her hand, the label on the grill, the reflection in her sunglasses, all in hopes of finding something. But it gave them nothing. They weren't the kind of couple you expect to vanish. And maybe that's what made it worse. They were good, kind, young, full of plans, and in the end, all that remained was a gap, a long, silent pause in the middle of a sentence they never got to finish. The pool party wasn't planned. It came together like most things do in late summer, with a group text and a weather forecast. The host, Jordan Pike, had just inherited the house from his grandmother. It was mid-renovation, but the backyard was intact, a fenced patio, string lights, and a deep, aging in-ground pool that still ran on its original 1980s filter system. He invited people late Friday morning. By nightfall, there were about 20 guests, friends of friends, a few neighbors, and a handful of people no one could exactly place. Someone brought chips. Someone else brought a Bluetooth speaker. The rest brought booze and half-baked stories. It was the kind of gathering where nobody kept track of time, or of each other. Lacey and Dylan arrived together around 9:15 p.m. Jordan remembered greeting them by the cooler, Dylan giving him a light punch on the shoulder, Lacey laughing about the pink flamingo float bobbing in the pool. She set her tote bag down beside a deck chair and pulled off her shoes. Someone turned up the music. Somewhere in the dark, someone lit a joint. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing them throughout the night. They danced, they swam. Lacey tried, and failed, to do a handstand in the shallow end. Dylan grilled a few burgers. They were, by every account, happy, present, normal. But as the night wore on, memories began to fracture. One guest, a girl named Sienna, said she remembered Lacey looking upset near the bathroom. Kind of tense, like she was holding something back. She said she saw Lacey talking to a guy near the side gate, someone older, not from our group. She couldn't remember what he looked like, just that he was tall, pale, and didn't say much. Another partygoer, Nick, claimed he saw Dylan around midnight, standing alone by the pool filter panel with a beer in one hand, staring at the water. "I asked if he was good," Nick said. "He didn't answer, just nodded like he didn't hear me." Then there was the end. Abor across the street, an older man named Harold Carver, who told detectives he heard a girl's scream sometime around 1:30 a.m. Not a long scream, just one, sharp and quick, then nothing. "Could have been laughing," he said. "Could have been a raccoon in the trash. I don't know." No one at the party heard it. By 2:00 a.m., the music had faded into low conversation and scattered yawns. The backyard emptied. The lights stayed on, the last drinks abandoned. No one remembered seeing Dylan or Lacey leave. No cars pulled out. No one offered them a ride. They weren't found asleep inside. They weren't passed out in the guest bedroom. They were just gone. Lacey's tote bag remained by the chair. Inside it, her phone, her favorite lip balm, a small bottle of sunscreen, and her sunglasses. Her sandals were tucked neatly beneath the table. Dylan's wallet, later found in the grass near the pool filter, was still full. Cash, license, mechanic's business card, all untouched. Security footage from Jordan's front yard Ring camera only deepened the mystery. The camera showed them walking into the backyard, hand in hand, smiling. The timestamp read 9:14 p.m. The next time the motion sensor was triggered, it was 2:37 a.m. The video showed Jordan, barefoot, walking out front to throw something in the trash. Dylan and Lacey never appeared again. There was no video of them leaving. Detectives canvassed the area. Every neighbor's camera was reviewed. No sign of them walking down the street. No strange cars, no movement at all. Inside the pool, things were murkier. By the time the police arrived 3 days later, the water was clouded with debris, grass clippings, dead bugs, and the remnants of too many bodies sweating in chlorinated water. The filter was overwhelmed, humming inconsistently. One of the detectives noted the faint smell of mildew. A forensic team drained it, and nothing. No blood, no clothing, no signs of struggle. Nothing beneath the water but silt, leaves, and a long rusted earring. Not Lacey's, not recent. The pool was dismissed as unimportant. The working theory became disjointed. They left the party, maybe together, maybe not. Maybe they went for a walk. Maybe they got into a car. Maybe there was a fight. Maybe someone followed them. Maybe. Too many maybes. Their faces were added to the National Missing Persons Database. Posters went up around town. Dylan's Jeep was never found. Lacey's phone remained dead, both bank accounts untouched. No confirmed sightings, no ransom demands, no evidence of foul play. The party was dissected 100 different ways. Friends re-interviewed, timelines reconstructed, voices looped and analyzed. But in the end, all they had were fragments, moments, blurs, glimpses of a night no one had thought to pay close attention to until it was too late. The party had come and gone, and so had they. The official missing persons report was filed at 8:12 p.m. on Monday, August 21st. Lacey's shift at the Bluefinch had come and gone. No call, no text, no show. Her boss called her phone twice, straight to voicemail. Ellie, her closest co-worker, texted her, "You good?" with a heart emoji. No reply. At 6:43 p.m., Lacey's mom, Adrienne, called the East Ridge Police Department from her kitchen in Reno. Dylan's mother, Rosa, had already made 2 calls of her own that day. First to his boss at Mercado Auto, then to his voicemail, which still had his voice on it. "Hey, it's Dylan. Leave it and I'll hit you back." He never did. The first officer assigned was Detective Jenna Rao, 38, sharp, methodical, the kind of investigator who believed in facts first and theories later. She began with the last known location, the pool party on Berry Hill Drive. The house sat quiet under the heavy stillness of late summer. The string lights were still up, though most had gone out. The pool was greenish now, ringed with a thin layer of grime. Jordan Pike, the host, was jittery and tired-looking when Rao arrived. "It was just a chill night," he kept saying. "We all just hung out, played music. They were totally fine." Detective Rao took notes, walked the yard, asked about the filter system. Jordan shrugged. "It's old," he said. "Gets clogged easy. I clean it when it starts smelling funny." She made a note of that. She also made note of the tight fence line, the absence of cameras in the backyard, and the slightly warped section of wooden gate that didn't quite latch. She requested the guest list. There wasn't one, officially. Just text chains, vague invites, and friends of friends nobody could quite place. 10 were confirmed. 4 were uncertain. 2 were strangers. That night, East Ridge PD issued a regional alert. By Tuesday morning, the story had broken across local news stations. Young couple vanishes after backyard party. Their faces, Dylan with his crooked smile and oil-smudged mechanic's shirt, and Lacey, lit by afternoon sunlight mid-laugh, were plastered on digital billboards and gas station TV screens. A Facebook group formed within hours, then 2, then 7. The hashtags began trending. #Find Lacey and Dylan, #Berry Hill Missing. Volunteers gathered at the town rec center, organizing flyer runs and foot searches, local parks, construction sites, drainage ditches. A few groups wandered into the hills outside town, armed with maps, flashlights, and more hope than logic. Detective Rao requested phone records. Lacey's phone had powered down at 2:06 a.m., Dylan's at 2:08. Both last pinged to the same general location, within 100 yards of the Berry Hill house. After that, digital silence. A search warrant was issued for the property. Forensics swept the house, yard, and pool area. They found a few things, none helpful. A patch of what appeared to be dried blood on the fence post turned out to be rust-stained sap. A broken hair clip in the grass, it didn't match Lacey's. A partial footprint near the pool deck matched Dylan's size, but was too faint to be useful. Inside the home, nothing stood out. No signs of a struggle. No out-of-place stains or damaged furniture. It was just a lived-in house with too many pizza boxes and a fridge full of expired condiments. Jordan Pike's alibi held. He'd stayed up, cleaned some, and crashed on the couch. Phone data, texts, and surveillance footage from the nearby gas station confirmed his timeline. But the questions multiplied. Why would two people, grounded, careful, in love, leave a party without their phones or wallets? Why would they vanish without warning? And why had no one seen them go? Detective Rao expanded the search radius. K-9 units were brought in from 2 counties over. They scoured the neighborhood and nearby ravines. Scent trails led to the backyard gate and stopped. Not faded, not lost, just gone. It was eerily similar to what the dogs would later do at the edge of Paintbrush Canyon in Wyoming, in a different story altogether. There was a brief glimmer of hope on day 5. A woman 60 miles north of East Ridge reported a possible sighting, a couple fitting Dylan and Lacey's description, walking along the shoulder of Route 19, but traffic cams in the area showed nothing, no confirmation, just another maybe, swallowed by the noise. Days turned into a week. The leads thinned. On day 9, Dylan's uncle posted a video to Facebook standing outside the garage where Dylan used to work. His voice cracked halfway through. "They're not the kind of kids who just vanish," he said. "Someone knows something. Please, if you saw anything, speak up." Police questioned everyone who'd been at the party. Most had nothing new to offer. One girl, Michelle, swore she remembered someone watching Lacey too closely. "A guy I didn't know. Buzz cut. Real serious looking. Just off." But her memory was foggy. No one else recalled him. Detective Rao brought in a forensic sketch artist. A loose composite was drawn and circulated. It led to dozens of calls, all dead ends. And still, the pool sat there, unremarkable, neglected, its filter slowly choking on forgotten debris. No one gave it much thought. A shallow body of water in a case built on shadows. On day 13, the case was escalated to the state level. East Ridge PD held a press conference. The police chief stood grim-faced behind a podium, flanked by Lacey's and Dylan's parents. Adrian held a photo of her daughter. Rosa clutched Dylan's high school graduation cap, knuckles white. "We just want them home," Adrian said, even if it's not the way we hoped." After the press conference, Detective Rao walked the perimeter of the Berry Hill property alone. She paused by the filter panel, listened to the hum of the old pump, faint, uneven. She made another note. The tip line remained open. Leads came in. Most were noise, others led to strange places, conspiracy forums, psychic visions. One man convinced they'd been taken by a cult, nothing credible. By the end of September, the posters began to fade in the sun. The social media group slowed. New cases took the headlines. The search didn't end, not officially, but it shifted, from frantic to quiet, from active to lingering, and the pool grew still again. By mid-October, the posters on telephone poles had begun to curl. The ink faded under the sun. The tape peeled. Lacey's smile, once so bright, so everywhere, began to fade from the edges of memory. Dylan's face, too, still boyish, still hopeful, still frozen in time. The case didn't go cold all at once. It settled, softly, like dusk creeping in through half-drawn curtains. Detective Rao continued her work, quietly now, methodically. She still ran new leads, still checked tips. But with no movement, no evidence, and no bodies, there was only so much to be done. The investigation shifted into what the department called PAW. Sive status. Not closed, not forgotten, just stalled. Behind the scenes, the families were unraveling in different ways. Lacey's parents, Adrian and Greg, tried to hold on to routine. They drove to East Ridge every other weekend, staying in the same roadside motel, eating the same silent breakfasts, checking in with the department even when there was nothing new to say. Adriana kept wearing her daughter's charm bracelet, the one with the tiny sunflower. It was too tight on her wrist, but she wouldn't take it off. Rosa Mercado couldn't sleep. She left the porch light on every night. She kept Dylan's Jeep registered and insured, just in case. She hadn't touched his room, not his boots by the door, not the old hoodie still folded at the foot of his bed. The press stopped calling after Halloween. The cafe where Lacey used to work replaced her on the schedule. Her favorite plant, a crooked little pothos in a chipped mug, sat on the windowsill for a while before someone moved it. At the garage, Dylan's tools were boxed and stored. His nameplate was taken down, quietly. No ceremony, and the internet filled the silence. It started with Reddit, a thread in a true crime forum titled "Vanished from a Pool Party. What happened to Lacey and Dylan?" Then TikTok got hold of it. Clips began surfacing, speculative breakdowns of the party timeline, satellite views of the neighborhood, drone footage of the backyard. One video zoomed into the reflection in Lacey's sunglasses from her final story post, claiming there was a man in the bushes. It got 2.3 million views. The man was a deck umbrella. Armchair detectives spun theories like thread, the stranger theory, that one of the unknown guests, possibly the pale man Michelle described, had targeted them. The inside job, that someone they knew at the party lured them away. The lovers' pact, that they had left together intentionally, fleeing the world. The pool theory, that something happened in the water, that it had been drained, too late. The most disturbing was the filter gate theory, that their bodies had somehow ended up in the pool system and had been missed by police. It was dismissed by investigators as wildly improbable and logistically absurd. But the internet didn't care. It caught fire. People demanded the pool be torn out. Some even posted Google Maps screenshots of the backyard with arrows and timestamps. One user wrote, "Check the filters, they're hiding something in the pipes." That comment would age differently than anyone could have guessed. In town, the community wore the absence of the couple like a bruise. Some avoided talking about them altogether. Others brought them up too much, too loudly, like saying their names might shake the silence loose. Time passed. The seasons changed. Rain fell, then wind, then a dry, brittle winter. The pool sat under a tarp, closed, untouched, forgotten by everyone except the janitor assigned to maintain the now empty property after Jordan Pike moved out in January. The house was listed for rent. No one wanted it. Then came spring, then summer again. 9 months. 9 months with no new leads, no new evidence, no new anything. Until a clogged pipe began to hum, and a man with a flashlight and a toolbox unlocked the panel by the pool, lifted the rusted grating, and reached his gloved hand into the system. The filter had been humming for weeks. It wasn't unusual, not for a pool system that old, but the sound had changed, not the usual rhythmic pulse of cycling water, but something more strained, a low, uneven groan that rattled the siding like an old man clearing his throat. The property manager noted it in a maintenance log, then passed it on to the janitorial subcontractor for follow-up. That subcontractor was Dennis Clay, 61, widowed, soft-spoken, the kind of man who kept extra gloves in his truck and still brought a thermos of coffee to every job. On June 3rd, at 9:41 a.m., Dennis parked his faded green pickup in front of the Berry Hill house. It had been nearly 9 months since the disappearance. The porch was sun-bleached, the weeds up to his shins. A torn flyer still hung from the fence. Missing, Dylan Lacey. Their faces, half erased by time and weather, looked past him. He didn't linger. Dennis wasn't a man prone to rumor or curiosity. He'd heard about the case, of course. Everyone had. But to him, this was just another job, another stubborn filter system in a house too quiet. He wheeled his tool cart to the side yard and unlatched the gate. The pool sat covered in a green tarp, sagging under months of rain and leaves. He knelt beside the old metal filter housing, a round, rusted beast of a thing, and unscrewed the panel. The smell hit first, rank, earthy, wet. Then came the blockage. He reached in with his gloved hand, feeling through the cold sludge, clumps of leaves, hair, small twigs. He grabbed what he thought was a mass of plastic wrap and pulled gently. It resisted. He braced his boot against the concrete lip of the pump housing and yanked. It came loose with a wet snap. Dennis stumbled back, coughing. In his hand was a tangle of synthetic fabric, knotted in algae, slick with slime. At first it looked like a wad of swimsuit lining, until he shook it out and saw the shape, padded, lace-trimmed, light pink. A bra, old, weathered, torn at the strap, but unmistakable. Dennis didn't panic. He didn't jump to conclusions, but he knew what he was holding didn't belong in a filtration system. Not like this. Not wrapped deep inside the housing, coiled and crammed into the narrow intake like something deliberately shoved in. He laid it gently on a clean towel from his kit. Then, carefully, he pulled out his phone and called the non-emergency line for East Ridge PD. He was connected to dispatch, then transferred, then patched through to Detective Jenna Rao. 20 minutes later, she was on site. She recognized it immediately. Not the bra itself, but the color. That soft, dusty pink. The same shade from the photo Lacey had posted the night she vanished. It had shown just a hint beneath her white cotton tee. She'd captioned it, "Still glowing." Rao put on gloves and leaned in close. The bra was faded but intact. A frayed white tag on the inside bore a barely legible brand name. The underwire was bent, the left cup torn along the seam, but most notable was the greenish-black residue clinging to the lace, not from the water, but from something else. Biological material, possibly algae, possibly something worse. Forensics arrived within the hour. The entire filter system was shut down and removed for evidence processing. The pool was drained again. Every pipe, joint, and valve was cataloged and photographed. Lacey's bra was placed in a sterile bag and rushed to the state crime lab. For the first time in nearly a year, the case had a new anchor point, and it had been here all along, beneath the surface. The discovery sent ripples through the department. Rao convened an emergency task force meeting. The old timeline was reevaluated, every witness statement re-examined. The forensics team returned to the property with fresh eyes and stricter tools. This time they brought ground-penetrating radar and advanced biological trace kits. They focused on the filter system's internal chambers, specifically the intake vent closest to the deep end. What they found there was subtle, but critical. Tiny fibers, consistent with swimsuit mesh and polyester blend, human clothing, one single stud. Rand of long, dark brown hair, not consistent with Jordan Pike or anyone else who had lived in the home, and wedged deep in the main pipe. Behind years of grime and pressure buildup was the metal hook from the same bra, corroded but intact, matching the one missing from the torn strap. The odds of all that being coincidence? Astronomical. The discovery changed the tone of the investigation. No longer just missing persons, now it was potentially homicide. Rao held a closed-door meeting with the district attorney. A search warrant was reissued, broader this time. Detectives questioned Jordan Pike again. His story hadn't changed, but his demeanor had. Defensive, tired, a little too prepared. They asked about the night again. about what he'd seen, about the pool, specifically when it was last cleaned before the party. He couldn't remember, or didn't want to. Investigators reached out to guests again, this time with photos. One girl, Kara, recognized the bra immediately. Lacey wore it all the time, she said, even posted it on her story that night. Everyone said it looked vintage. She loved that. The evidence, though circumstantial, painted a clear message. Lacey Forrester had not walked out of that backyard. She had never left the property. And something had been hiding all along just below the surface, caught in the machinery, clinging to the last breath of a life cut short. The pool was no longer just a pool. It was now a crime scene, a timeline, a container for secrets. The filter system was taken apart piece by piece at the state forensics lab. It was slow work, grim, precise, and done under sterile lights. Every valve was scraped, every seal photographed. The inner walls of the pump housing were coated in a fine, greasy film, organic, dark, and clinging. Lab analysts ran samples through a spectrometer. Blood, heavily degraded but unmistakable. It was consistent with Lacey's blood type, O negative, a rare marker that, statistically, appeared in less than 7% of the population. More testing was ordered. Mitochondrial DNA pulled from the bra's underwire residue produced a partial match to Lacey's maternal lineage. It wasn't conclusive, but it was close enough to light the fuse. The case was officially reclassified. Probable homicide, suspect unknown. Detective Rao returned to the original scene, not just the house, but the party, the layout, the witness memories. She built a digital reconstruction of the backyard using 3D modeling software and time-stamped photographs. She plotted where each person had been seen, down to the floaties in the pool and the fire pit logs. Then she re-interviewed everyone, again. But this time, she asked new questions. Where was Lacey between 1 o'clock and 1:30 a.m.? Did anyone remember her re-entering the house? Who was left outside near the pool at the end? Several guests had foggy memories. A few said they'd seen her head inside alone. One guy said he thought she was arguing with Dylan, but like low-key, not dramatic or anything. Someone else remembered a thud near the side gate. Another heard splashing around the time the music cut out. No one remembered her leaving, and no one remembered her screaming. Rao revisited the Ring camera footage. The front yard feed remained the same. Dylan and Lacey entering at 9:14 p.m., Jordan stepping outside to toss trash at 2:37 a.m. No recorded exit, no vehicles, no strange figures, just gaps. Then she asked the lab to review the footage frame by frame, not for people, but for light. One technician spotted something odd. At 1:52 a.m. there was a subtle flicker of reflected blue light in a window pane, consistent with a pool light turning off. According to Jordan, the lights were never manually switched off, which meant someone had accessed the filter panel, which sat beside the kill switch for the pool's electrical system. And that switch had been flipped that same night, that same minute. A warrant was obtained to pull Jordan Pike's phone data again. Not just call records, but accelerometer and geolocation data. At 1:50 a.m. his phone had been motionless on the kitchen counter. But his smartwatch? It logged a spike in heart rate and steps. Between 1:48 and 1:56 a.m., it showed him walking 37 steps to the side yard. When confronted, Jordan insisted he was probably just getting some air or grabbing something from the side gate. But he couldn't remember what, or why he'd turned off the pool lights, or why he hadn't mentioned it before. Rao didn't press charges, not yet, but she filed for an official person of interest designation. Then came the second break. An anonymous tip submitted through the police department's website. He cleaned the pool the next day. I saw him drain some water out, said it was too cloudy to deal with. I thought it was weird. The tip came from a neighbor, 2 houses down, early riser, sprinkler enthusiast. The morning after the party, around 8:15 a.m., he'd seen Jordan standing shirtless in the side yard, hosing off the concrete and fiddling with the drainage spigot. This contradicted Jordan's earlier claim that he'd crashed on the couch until noon. Detective Rao requested access to the home's water meter records from the utility company. Sure enough, On the morning of August 20th, 2023, the home logged a sudden spike in water output, consistent with an intentional drain cycle from the pool's skimmer valve. Jordan had drained part of the pool, hours after the couple vanished. Now they had motive, movement, and obstruction. What they didn't have was the how, until the lab made a third discovery. Inside the final length of the intake pipe, just above the impeller, technicians found something wedged so deeply they had to use micro-forceps to remove it. It was a stud earring, gold with a small aquamarine stone. The post was bent. The backing was missing. Lace. Why's mother was shown the evidence. She didn't need time to think. That's hers, she said. Her birthstone. Her father gave her that pair when she turned 18. It was the final link. Somewhere between that backyard and the filter system, Lacey had been pulled, pushed, or drowned. Her body never recovered, but her presence undeniable. The working theory emerged like a bruise. Sometime between 1:30 and 2 a.m., an altercation occurred, possibly between Jordan and Lacey. Maybe Dylan stepped away. Maybe he was already unconscious. Maybe there was a confrontation, or a refusal, or a struggle. What they believe happened next was grim. Lacey was attacked near the pool's edge. In the scuffle, her earring was torn loose. She either fell or was forced into the water. The lights were turned off, the filter panel accessed, the system running. If she died in the pool, or near it, the filter could have drawn in her clothing, hair, and blood. It wouldn't take much. Just a body near the intake and enough time for suction to do what it was designed to do. And her bra, torn, twisted, tangled, would eventually lodge deep inside, pulled tight by months of uninterrupted pressure. Dylan's fate remained unclear. Some theorized he was knocked unconscious, hidden elsewhere, or perhaps met a similar end, somewhere not yet found. But the evidence tied to Lacey was damning. The DA prepared for a formal indictment. Detective Rao reviewed her notes in the dim light of the evidence room, staring at the bagged bra, the bent earring, the photo of that half-lit pool from Lacey's final story. 9 months, and it had been right there the whole time. Not in the woods, not on the road, not buried in a shallow grave, but in the water, humming, circulating, waiting to be found. The arrest came quietly. At 6:07 a.m. on July 18, 2024, exactly 10 months to the day after the pool party, a pair of unmarked police vehicles pulled into the driveway of a rental home 20 minutes outside East Ridge. Jordan Pike answered the door in pajama pants and a t-shirt that read, "Good vibes only." He barely spoke. Detective Jenna Rao stood just behind the arresting officer as he was cuffed and placed in the back of the cruiser. No cameras, no sirens, just the click of metal and the faint whisper of the wind through the sycamores. The charges were formalized that afternoon. Second-degree murder, Lacey Forrester, obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence. There was not enough evidence to charge him in Dylan Mercado's presumed death. His body had never been found. His name remained listed under missing, presumed deceased. At arraignment, Jordan pled not guilty. His defense attorney argued the forensic evidence was circumstantial, speculative, and fundamentally unprovable. They called the bra commonplace, the DNA match inconclusive, the earring unverified. But behind closed doors, prosecutors were building something stronger, a narrative of escalating behavior, suppressed rage, and opportunity. What sealed it wasn't physical evidence. It was a recording. A voicemail Dylan had left for his friend Nick at 1:38 a.m. never opened until after the arrest. It was short, barely 17 seconds, muffled, slurred, background noise. But halfway through the clip, two things became chillingly clear. First, Dylan's voice, whispering something that sounded like, "He won't leave her alone." Second, a faint splash, then a sharp, high-pitched cry. Lacey's voice. It was enough. In early spring of 2025, Jordan Pike was offered a plea deal, 25 years to life, with the murder charge reduced to voluntary manslaughter if he revealed what happened to Dylan. He refused, and so the case went to trial. The courtroom was packed. Lacey's parents sat in the front row every day. Her mother wore black, Her father carried a folded photo in his coat pocket, a picture of Lacey, as a child, missing one front tooth, holding a garden hose like a microphone. Rosa Mercado attended when she could. She always sat quietly, alone, her rosary clutched tightly in both hands. Prosecutors presented the full timeline, the movements of Jordan's smartwatch, the filter's kill switch being manually flipped, the earring found in the impeller, the partial DNA match, the voicemail, and finally, the bra. When they passed the evidence bag across the courtroom, its faint pink lace dulled by time and chlorine, the room went still. Even the judge lowered his gaze. Jordan showed no emotion throughout the trial. No tears, no visible reaction. He didn't look at the families, didn't speak, not until the final day, when asked if he wanted to make a statement. He stood slowly, cleared his throat, and said, "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." That was all. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole until 2049. The courtroom exhaled. But for the families, justice was not peace. In the months that followed, the headlines faded. The case slipped from trending hashtags into archive tags. Reddit threads slowed. TikToks stopped. The pool was drained one final time and filled with concrete. The Berry Hill property was sold to a developer. The house was demolished. In its place, they built a duplex. No one planted flowers. Lacey Forrester's body was never found. But a memorial was placed at the corner of Chestnut and Fifth. A bronze plaque bolted to the bench outside the cafe where she used to work. It reads, "In loving memory of Lacey, whose light, laughter, and kindness remain etched in every sunrise." Above it, a small sunflower, carved in relief, petals open wide. Dylan's name was added months later after the judge granted a posthumous declaration of death at Rose. So Mercado's request. His plaque reads, "Dylan Mercado, honest hands, quiet heart, missed beyond words." The town grieved them differently. Not loudly, but in quiet habits. One mechanic now keeps his radio tuned to Dylan's favorite station. A barista places a sunflower sticker on every 10th coffee cup. Someone, no one knows who, leaves a White Claw can on the sidewalk near where their last photo was taken. Detective Jenna Rao was promoted later that year. She doesn't speak publicly about the case, but in one interview, when asked what stuck with her the most, she said, "The water. It had all the answers. We just weren't listening." The case is now taught at the State Police Academy under a module called Hidden Evidence in Domestic Spaces. But for the families, there are no modules, no closure, only what remains. The missing pieces, the long pauses in conversation, the birthdays that come and go. Still, they gather once a year, on the anniversary. Not at a gravesite, but at the park by the lake, where the water is clear and the sky open. They bring music, favorite snacks, photos. They laugh, they cry, they sit with the silence. And when the sun sets, when the light slips golden over the trees, Adrienne sometimes says what she always says. They were just kids at a party. That's all they were. Just kids, trying to glow a little longer. And then, without fail, someone turns to the water and listens.